Well, I know what you're doing, You're getting that email off to Amit before I have to show up in his
Oh
in
my
his
God,
office,
no.
right?
No, I'm actually making notes. So I'm prepared for my blooper today.
I love it. Welcome to an all-new episode of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield. This podcast explores leadership traits under stress with a special guest each week. We use a simple and accurate OAD assessment to identify key personality traits or superpowers, as well as the shadow side, kryptonite traits that appear when we're under stress. As always, we'll have some pod banter, shameless plugging, and we'll even let our guests talk for a bit. Of course, no humble brags. Welcome to the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another live episode of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield. Will, I'm going to start using that now because technically I checked. We are live. We are alive anyway.
Yes, and yes.
So we're going to do that. We have Danny with us. As usual, we'll get to our guests in a little bit because, Will, what do we have?
We have banter, and you always have a trick or three up your sleeve.
Yes, I do. I'll just do my first little banter, which is
Okay.
I've asked you to change your name several times because my typical sentence structure is will do something. I find that confusing. So it would make my life easier if you would change your name.
So my middle name is Henry.
Hank.
We can go by that if you like. Hank.
Ooh. Hank, is that okay? How does that sound? Danny, do you like Hank on Will? That sounds weird.
Does it like a Hank?
I think you got a Hank. All right.
Actually, at one point, I tried to change my nickname to Buck. I thought Buck
who?
Barfield sounded Buck. I thought Buck Barfield sounded awesome,
What grade
but it
were you
didn't
in?
stick.
Yeah, could have been the Buck Barfield.
I was
corn
20-something.
player.
You were 26?
20-something.
Oh.
But I was like, yeah, I think Buck Barfield would be awesome, but it never stuck.
It never stuck. I got that. Okay, well, here's the real banter. Do you recall what we did earlier this week?
Probably not.
We had a little announcement on LinkedIn. Is what we do.
Oh, yes, that was about a blog where we became famous.
We officially launched our Work in Progress Leadership Workshop series, and note the circle R.
We do so many things.
Congrats.
We do so many things a week.
I know.
It's very hard for me to recall, particularly since I don't pay attention. How'd you get did you just add that R, or did we earn that
added it.
Oh, you
you
just cut and paste it from somewhere?
Yeah. Look, my mom wanted me to go to law school and be an attorney. So that didn't work out, but at least I can put a circle R or a TM on things. So
but is that speaking of attorneys, I hope no one's watching. I don't know. Is that legal to just cut and paste like that?
No, you just put a bracket and you put an R or a TM and it does that for you.
How about that?
Amazing.
So it's registered. That's a trademark.
Last episode was the R train. This is the circle R episode.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can't even imagine next week what we will do.
Well, we'll just say this because everyone wants to know that currently there are 3, 6, 9, 12 leadership workshop series workshops. We have to work on that. We have to workshop how we describe that. It's a bit of a mouthful. Anyway, so we're getting great feedback on it. It's super fun to work on these and to bring our brand into new places. But that's not what today is about. Today is about our friend, Danny. Actually, first, it's about you and me. I'm John Lane.
And I'm Will Barfield.
And we are a work in progress.
Yes.
With our friend Danny here. So it's actually, I got to change this. I'm John Lane. He's Buck Barfield.
Oh, I thought it was Hank. Wait, whichever.
Oh, we'll see. I'm taking notes.
Pick a day. Pick a day, pick a name.
All right. And Will, what am I taking notes on?
That thing that
beautiful. You read the copy. The remarkable tablet, the tablet for thinkers.
Are you trying to get them to sponsor? Is that why you're
working
on that right now?
I'm continuing to flog that dead horse until we get a response.
It was seltzer from Wegmans. It's been Peloton.
I know,
it's been
Peloton, other stuff, and anyway, we're still.
You know what's interesting? Danny is all about logoed things.
Branding,
this work with Brand Fuel. Maybe he can help us with a sponsor. Or you could just make up a sponsor like you made up that trademark.
Circle R, yes, Danny, make up a sponsor for us, would you please? Okay. Enough jib jab. Danny, welcome to our show. Tell our audience, I literally mean that in the singular sense. Tell
My
them
wife.
about a little bit about you. What should they know about you, and what are you holding a big check for?
Yeah, so I kind of run the balance of for-profit and non-for-profit worlds.
Nice.
I'll start with the for-profit and get to the good stuff. I am a co-founder, co-president of a company called Brand Fuel. We say we're a free-spirited brand merchandising agency. We produce large corporate stores for people who want to distribute merchandise with their logo or design on it. We're doing it in a sustainable way. We're also doing custom projects, kitting projects, and we do all that stuff to recognize companies, employees, their customers, help them prospect and find new businesses to work with. And we are also a B corporation, so we are focused on business as a force for good, which kind of leads into the reason why I'm holding that check for over $1 million with my friends at Band Together, which is a nonprofit in the Triangle that I co-founded right after the Twin Towers came down in 2001. So we've been around about 22 years. And every year we choose a different issue in the community. This year we're working on accessible and affordable housing, and we find nonprofits to do the work out there in that space to take that $1 million and put it to good use in our communities. And we do all of that through live concert events. So we've got an October 7th show at Red Hat Amphitheater. We're going to be sold out with Jason Isbell. We're about $250,000 in raised wise, and we're going to change the this amazing community to be even better through the power of music and community.
That is amazing work. Will and I flog assessment software to sales leaders. That's what we do for the community. So, Will, I think he's better than us. Would you agree?
Oh, we try to always have guests on that are better than us. The bar's low, but Danny leaps way over that bar. Mm-hmm. I will say, Danny, Band Together, great program, great event. My wife and I have been to more than one of the shows.
Thank you.
And the cause you have selected this year, hypercritical, particularly in this market. That was music to my ears to hear you bring that up. Thank you. There is a dearth of that affordable housing available, and we need to pour money into that. Thank you.
That is awesome. It is great work. I will also just go back to your for-profit side and say, if you knew a fledgling podcast that had a very nice logo that needed some swag on the cheap, maybe you would help them out too.
Yeah,
possibly.
I'd be happy to. We've got a great team of folks here. That's and by the way, like we've grown a lot lately, and I just think about our staff, and we don't have a big turnover, thankfully.
That's amazing.
What a gift they are. We're such a good group of folks.
I'm so glad. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. Well, you grew. I don't want to say cautiously, but you grew intelligently and sustainably. So congratulations on that. All right, let's get into the good stuff. So everyone knows who watches this show that we look at what we call leadership traits under stress. That is, your personality traits are your superpowers, and under stress, those superpowers can work against you. We're going to explore that. We use the OAD survey to establish what those superpowers and kryptonites are, and then we explore. So in OAD terms, Danny is what we call a socially oriented generalist. By coincidence, he and I are in the same quadrant, but we are both negotiators, and we'll go into what that means.
So stunned that he ended up upper right as a bill.
Yeah, exactly. So, so Danny, how does it feel to be reduced to a 2x2 table? Kind of interesting, right?
It is interesting, and it's fun to look at. And I've been on this earth for a while. I think it's taken some time to not only understand who I am but who I am in relation to other people, which I think is the big light bulb moments that I'm starting to have as I'm a little bit older and realizing my impact, good and not so good, on those around me, many of who I love dearly.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're gonna explore, definitely explore some of that. So let me just do the usual 2-second review here. I will say, that's our software. We need a laser pointer, but we don't have one today. So we look at the traits on the right and the left. The ones on the right are dominant. The ones on the left are subordinate. So Danny's he is in high A, high E, the assertiveness and extroversion. Unlike most people, including your humble podcast co-host here, your P is exceptionally higher as well, which means you bring a very unusual combination of assertiveness, extroversion, and patience. Usually, those first two have somebody with mid to low patience. Patience
Correct.
in our world isn't just are you patient or impatient, it's a measure of single tasking versus multitasking and urgency. And so this is a somewhat rare version of that. And then the very low D, the lower D, is interesting because that connotes a absolute willingness to delegate. And this tells me you are somebody who recognizes that um, you aren't the best at everything, and you'll surround yourself with people, and you're not going to make yourself the bottleneck. You're not going to have a death grip on every project. You're going to learn to trust somebody and then pass the ball to them rather than try to hold on to everything yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think all that stuff's true. I think, but if we had met 10 years ago, I think I would have that P would have been kicked over a bunch, and the D the same. Um,
Yeah.
I've learned that I have to be this way, or I'm just not going to be successful.
Yeah.
And yeah,
No, you go.
well, I think the patience thing. I'm not sure what others would say around me. I know it's part of the questionnaire. Um, I think they might say that I'm a little less patient because I do move pretty quickly and make decisions fast, and
Yeah.
others don't as much.
Right. Cool. All right. So this is what we call the generic superpowers and kryptonite. So you, me, anyone else who has a builder negotiator trait pattern, the system will produce these. So we put them
Yes.
out as a conversation starter, and will talk to you a little bit about how these feel to you, and then we'll get into a little bit more of your own personal takes.
Let's roll, John.
I mean, Hank will.
Are we staying on? So we're going to do it as a joint slide here. We're not going to do one that's super, one that's. Thank you.
I was waiting for you to start talking.
Oh, I'll talk. I got no problem with that.
We should probably rehearse.
No.
Let's take a note. Danny, take a note. Remind us to rehearse.
Done.
Thank you, sir.
What makes this podcast so special is the fact that we don't, and our natural interaction and how well we get along. And that thing's showing up on the screen. I need to stop moving.
Something like that. Yeah.
There we go. Hi, Danny. So, as John said on this, superpower slide here, anyone who shows up in this upper right quadrant, builder negotiator profile, is going to get this readout of 5 bulleted generic superpowers. But while we're here on the slide, is there one of these that in particular leaps out at you or speaks to you, or you or others would identify as absolutely, that's Danny, that's a strength?
I think somewhere probably between driving and self-confident. I would love to say it was optimistic demeanor. I'm probably a little less optimistic than I'd want to be in some cases, but maybe self-confident. Like I'm okay in pretty much every situation, and just roll through life, just doing it, getting it done, not thinking too much about it, and that confidence I think is typically a good thing. But I know my limitations and my strengths, and I leverage those around me. That gives me all that stuff gives me confidence, my ability to be persuasive. So I'd say that.
Perfect. And then, we have the kryptonite side, right? The shadow side, when things get stressful or hard, or, you're trying to make sure you meet that fundraising threshold, or you're trying to make sure you meet the quarter, with business, with revenue projections. Stress is up. kryptonite, one of these. Is there one that you'd like to double click on here that
Yep.
really stands out as something you notice when your weaknesses are being exposed?
Yeah, trying to do better at number one, but I'm going to go with these are kind of interlinked, but the analytical side, something I really have tried to hone over the years, I've done a little better, but I'm just not good at it, nor do I enjoy it a whole lot. And some of that is connected to attention to detail and things like that, but not sufficiently analytical. That's the one I'm going with. Will, Hank,
Yeah, Hank Buck,
Henry,
any whatever.
Hank Buck. I
Buck.
love that. Hank Buck.
So as we shift from this, Danny, you interacted with John, you saw your results, you took some time to look at the readout and then make your own notes on superpowers and reflect. So we're not going to just focus on one here. Welcome you to talk through these as you like, and I may jump in and ask a question as you're kind of going through this, but we're going to try and we're in size here a little bit, and then we'll spend more time on the next slide on the kryptonite, because that's where the juicy stuff is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've had the good fortune of, you know, being able to connect with a lot of people in my life and develop a lot of relationships. And those things have helped me grow as a person and helped me grow businesses and nonprofits and things like that. So, I just would say that kind of rolling through life, falling in love with a lot of people that I meet. I'm not looking at the downside and the negative out of the gate. So, I call that pathological optimism in a way. I'm seeing all the good. Uh, Pathology to me is scientific. It can be a bad thing. Um, it can be a disease, really.
Yeah.
So I think people go, "Oh, you're a pathological optimist. That means you're an eternal optimist." No, it just means I'm probably missing some things, as well as capturing a lot of the beauty and joy in life. And so I think there's a weakness within being a pathological optimist. But those those things that I've done in my life, after 55 years now, the good, the bad, the ugly, I've been able to kind of right the ship in many ways, especially with my nonprofit work. And that's afforded me the opportunity not only to grow as a person and grow the businesses and nonprofits, but to help others grow. And so I've done everything I possibly can to take the call, take the meeting for anybody who's really in need or in search of doing ways to do better in our communities. And so that has created a ripple effect. I don't keep track of it at all, but I just know, when I lay the karma down in this life, I think about the legacy for my daughters and my family and for my business. These are the things that matter most to me, which is helping other people. It sounds so commonplace, but I've positioned myself to be able to be someone who people reach out to. And I take that really seriously. And interestingly, it's kind of selfish because I get a lot out of it. I learn from people. I see the gaps in the communities. And when you're able to give someone an idea or lend a hand, connect them to a donor, I know that ripple effect is going into Raleigh or my industry or the music community, all the things that I love so much. And ultimately, this will be handed off to our daughters at some point in time, and they'll take this and do something with it. And I hope it's of value, and that also gives me great peace of mind.
Well, appreciate all that, and really that stream of consciousness share that kind of wrapped all those bullets together. I have what I hope is a good question, but before I get to that one, I got to ask you what cosmic glue stick means.
Someone called me that one time, and so I'm not really sure, other than the fact I think glue is sticky. And I think when you think about what's going on in the world, bringing people together, being a connector of good things, I think that's what that meant. I hope, but that's what I took away from it.
Got it. So that this pathological optimism, and you think about people that you work with, right? You employ at your company, your leadership team, people that are on the boards with the nonprofit work that you do, or other nonprofit leaders that you team with, or people that you add, volunteers that you recruit. Do you do a good job of balancing, Danny's hyper optimism, pathological positivity, with people who maybe are of the opposite side of the spectrum, and are the glass half empty as opposed to glass half full, or going to give you the yang to your yin and help balance you out a little bit when you are so positive or so hopeful or so optimistic, and they pull you back in without deflating you.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I think the best examples of that, Will, are the two people who are closest in my life. So my wife and my business partner. There are a lot of things that start with co that I've started. So I'm co-president, co-founder. I could go on about those things. I've never done cocaine, by the way.
Good.
But
That is good.
but I co-parent with my wife. We're married, but when I think about that and those people that I love them both dearly, they are almost polar opposite of who I am. So I've been able to surround myself with people who have better shit detectors than me and see the sort of the bad side of things or challenge me in a different way. I can be combative and hold my ground, and I can burn those relationships to the ground. And I've worked hard at trying to be aware of that. But it's easier to accept that I am a certain way and that they are almost the opposite way, and that these two things, when they come together, if I can take a deep breath and not be defensive, I actually might learn a little bit about myself or the situation we're in, and therefore grow and be more successful as a couple and a family, or a business relationship like I have with Robert. And so I desperately need those yins.
Say Robert's full name for everybody.
Robert Fibash.
Hey, Robert.
My wife's name's Nicole.
I think that's awesome. I want to say something that, Will, if you don't mind, that I've learned in doing this OAD work, which is, this is probably not entirely accurate, but I like to say people on the right, socially oriented, like you and I, Danny, are more PowerPointy and salesy and vision, and people on the left are more analytical and maybe more Excel. So PowerPoint versus Excel, just as a motif. And I'm noticing in the work that we do that people aren't, when they disagree in a group setting, almost like the majority of the time, they're not disagreeing over content. They're disagreeing over context, meaning the socially oriented person is selling too hard to somebody who doesn't like to be sold to.
Right.
And they may love the idea, but they can't get past the communication stuff.
That's right.
And that's where a lot of our work comes in. Well, one more point, if you don't mind.
Of course not.
One of the things we say about the relationship between E and D, especially when they're as far apart as yours are, is that they are very quick to trust, quick to love. Doesn't mean they'll stay there, but if you fall for something, you're going to fall for something. You're going to be optimistic, and you're going to see it. And with your distance between those two so far, that means you have that in spades. And so it does make sense to me that you called yourself a pathological optimist. I don't know that I'd use the word pathological professionally, but I do know that when you're 7 points different on that scale, a word like pathological absolutely can be used.
Great answer, Danny, and thank you for that honesty there. My business partner, the owner of my company, is my wife. So we're running a business together, having a marriage, and raising kids together in that dynamic. I certainly understand the need for that balance. She is absolutely, the opposite. I think can have a negative connotation. She's she's a great counterbalance.
Yeah.
And you got to have those people, in business and in those most important relationships in your life. Okay, kryptonite. Things get tough. Things get hard. Challenges erupt. These are the points that you wanted to make, right? You brought up the pathological optimism on the last page, but you want to touch on any other of these things that are your categorical, self-identified weaknesses when stress is high.
Yeah, I want to talk about Danny Palooza and the Danny bias.
Yes,
I think it's probably important to kind of talk about. Yesterday, for example, we hosted the City of Raleigh Emerging Leaders, got a chance to talk to them. I had a dinner after that with some of the most influential people in North Carolina. I got to sit at the table with some amazing people. After that, I went to a concert ripe at Lincoln Theater with my employees and some folks
Great.
in
I love
town.
that place.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so good. It's just go, go, go. And I think my wife, when I got home at 11:30, which is usually when I go to sleep. So I tried to be sensitive to that. I got home and I was going to take the dogs out, but she'd already done that. And I woke her up and it was awful. And it just kind of was, I thought to myself, what a great day I had by myself, with my people bouncing. And I think, she would consider that a Danny Palooza day where it was, here's Danny and the world is like just going around and around him. And that's not necessarily a healthy way to live all the time. And you have to be sensitive to relationships there and make sure that, you make it about other people. And I'm working really hard on that, especially at home. And we just celebrated 20 years married, 22 years together. And she's more of an introvert. My business partner is more of an introvert. And so handing them the microphone when they'll take it, or recognizing them, or coming home a little bit earlier, or just, doubling down on things that really matter to them are important. But I think they're also realizing that they don't want to, stomp on the thing that, attracted them to me most, the thing that, I balance them like they balance me. And so I think they want me to be able to be a great sales or marketing or fundraiser or party fun guy or great dad that the kids love. And so there's a warring balance, that it's inside my head, my heart all the time about that. And, it's not about selflessness, but it's self-awareness maybe, that I just have worked really hard on. And, you can call it a dopamine addiction. It's very likely. And I like being happy and healthy and successful, So anyway.
And when do you strum the unnecessary air guitar? When does that happen?
Yeah, that's not something I do. It's something other people do, and when they do it, especially when it's to bands like Journey, I can't handle it. That's a kryptonite for me. I have to walk away.
Well, your recognition of the fact that a Danny Palooza day, that all the time you give to others and the things you're passionate about and stuff that releases that dopamine is time that you can't give to the woman at home who was asleep when you got there and woke her up. She does not want to crush who you are and what makes you fabulous and why people are drawn to you and makes you successful as an entrepreneur and as a fundraiser and a giver. And yet it's hard to, strike that balance between all the asks that come at you and all the people that see you doing great things. When they see you doing great things, it's just more people to ask you to do even more great things, right? And you're like, yes, 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 yes. And I also have had to come to some recognitions in challenging conversations with my business partner about where is your time being spent? That's great. That's good for the business. That's good for your soul. That's good for the community. How about me? And that's exactly what you're talking about here is, sometimes I got to pump the brakes and, and turn off the Palooza machine and make sure that the kids or my wife or, other aspects of my life aren't getting, lapped by me doing the other stuff I love running around doing.
That's right.
Great point. Guilty as charged too.
Yeah, love it.
So hopefully you pulled some things out of this experience, Danny, that were helpful, reflective, that you can use. For you, work and social pretty intimately tied. What you do for a business, what you do for the community, and all your connectivity. But what did you gather from this experience that maybe reinforced some things? What was new? How can you apply this professionally? The things that you've gained today.
Yeah, I think it's funny, the converse of certain things is that I'm good at. So the negative side, the patience is something that's interesting to me. I pointed out earlier, but I think instead of being the person who is exhausting the energy in the room, the person who is talking first, There's this idea that I feel like I need to be a bit more patient and listen, and think about these third party people in my life that matter so much to me. That actually, I think about it as you were talking, Will. It just makes me realize like there's just no way I could be me without them. And I think if I'm aware of that, uh, that's going to allow me to, maybe just be a little bit more sensitive and self-aware.
Yeah, and the good thing is that you're extroverted, right? And so you're a natural communicator. You don't mind having the conversations. I too have a propensity for defensiveness to be the first reaction. Well, hold on, but look at all these good things I did.
Right.
And what it's about in that moment is, look, let's not talk about all the wonderful. We know the wonderful. Let's talk about this situation that's in front of us right now, and why I, your business partner, or I, your spouse, are telling you, you're not checking this box for me. You've checked everybody else's boxes 2 or 3 times. So I definitely can identify with that.
I love that. Yeah, and I wrote down no me without them. So I like that. And speaking of no me, we have to bid adieu.
Oh, there's no me without you, John.
There's no pod without you. Let's say that. Danny, amazing to have you on. I love running into you in all the weird places that we run into each other in our wonderful little small town. But we'll just leave it as I'm John Lane.
I am Will Barfield, or Hank, or Buck Barfield.
And we are all, especially our names, a work in progress.
Yeah, work in progress.
Have a good week, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
Work in Progress is a podcast presentation of Slipshod Productions. Available on LinkedIn and YouTube. Executive produced and starring John Lane and Will Barfield. Talent booking, production, and editing by John Lane. Thanks for watching. See you next week.